All right, so welcome to our session on fraternity sorority recruitment and marketing thereof. I decided to put those two kind of together because they're interwoven in a lot of ways. A lot of the stuff we're talking about is how we're marketing ourselves to potential recruits. So I've retitled the program, Why Aren't People Joining Fraternities and Sororities Anymore? I'll preface this by saying that fraternity and sorority membership on a national level ebbs and flows, and Stockton kind of doubled in size in terms of fraternity and sorority population from 2013 to 2017. And then in 2017, it kind of plateaued a little bit. We were over 1,000 members at that point. And then it started to go down slightly, and then the pandemic hit, and then now we're kind of in this position where we're basically at about 65% of where we were in 2017. But again, these trends happen, we ebb and flow, so it's nothing to be alarmed about. But at the same time, for those who remember, we're told that their chapter might have had 100 members a few years ago, and that's not where you're at now. It's nothing to be, freaking out about. But what it does tell us is that when times change, we need to adjust how we're doing things, because what worked maybe 5 years ago does not work anymore, right? So those are things we always have to consistently talk about. So that being said, what we're going to cover today is kind of, philosophy behind fraternity and sorority recruitment, how we actually market what our organization's about, right? Marketing our values, what we represent, meeting people and building connection, what our selection process looks like, the actual process of securing new members, how we retain those members, and then in relation, what are the Stockton rules and procedures that you have to understand in terms of bringing new members into the organization. All right, so philosophy here. Fraternities are in the relationship business, right? We deal in human connection. This thing we call brotherhood and sisterhood is really code for meaningful, purpose-driven, sincere human connection, right? And I know you might not think about it that way, but philosophically, that's what it is, right? Organizations that are great at growing their membership understand that their number one goal should be to build a system of authentic relationships. Organizations that are great at growth start by giving away this feeling of brotherhood and sisterhood generously to those that are around them, right? To potential members. Social excellence challenges fraternity and sorority members to engage prospective members with intention, always seeking that real human connection. Social excellence reminds fraternity members that every person we encounter is full of a lifetime of stories and lessons that we can connect with if we choose to be curious. Social excellence pushes fraternity members to be real, authentic, not fake, sincere in all of our interactions with potential members, because then they'll be that way with us. Social excellence gently encourages fraternity and sorority members to choose to be vulnerable in our interactions with prospective members, because they aren't seeking a club to join or a t-shirt to wear or a house to live in. They're seeking belonging and purpose, and those things can only be shared with a healthy dose of vulnerability. Every moment is a choice. We can choose to engage with the people around us, or we can choose not to. We can choose to care about every person and every conversation, or we can choose not to. We can choose to open ourselves up to others or not. We can choose to be average or not. But our founders did not create our organizations so that we can be average. You're a member of a social fraternity or sorority, or at least that's a part of what your organization's about. So don't be socially average, be socially excellent, right? And if you're socially excellent, you can watch how it transforms the way your chapter grows, right? So philosophically, our recruitment is about building those relationships. It's about being vulnerable, and it's about offering what you have to other people. And that's a special gift. I like to look at fraternity as a gift, right? We have many different organizations on campus. There's different organizations for different individuals. I might not be a good fit for one chapter, but I'm a good fit for another chapter. It's really about relationship building. We can talk about what the organization stands for in terms of like what its philanthropy is and its service initiatives. But at the end of the day, fraternity and sorority is about relationships. You join an organization based on the people in that chapter, right? So that's really important. And that's where we're going to kind of start with in this whole conversation. The other two things I want to mention philosophically is that we believe in freedom of association. As a public university, Stockton University is not going to impede your ability to recruit new members. So other campuses might tell you that recruitment is between this date and this date, can only give out bids on this date, and have really strict rules. At Stockton, I do not believe in that. So I basically tell you that as long as you follow the policies and procedures, you can give out a bid at any time. Okay. Because really it's about communication with me. As long as you're following the policy, I will approve you giving out those bids. The third one is that recruitment is a 365-day process. It should be ingrained into everything we do, not something we solely do on its own. So what do I mean by that? The act of recruitment is basically what I said. It's about building relationships. So are we building relationships every day, or are we just building relationships during a 5-day period we call rush week? Obviously, we're building relationships all the time. We meet new people all the time, and we're going to build relationships that way. So from that perspective, we shouldn't be looking at recruitment as like this rush week, like 1 week type thing. And, hopefully by next week we have 20 bids we can give out. Really, it's about over time building those relationships with other people until it gets to the point where, they want to be a part of what we're doing because they know what it's about. They like us as individuals. They view it as something special, and we're offering them a gift by giving them that bid, right? Let's elevate what we are in terms of how we even talk about ourselves, right? So that's why I call it a gift. I think that's really special. So philosophically, that's the starting point. So I mentioned social excellence a lot, right? So, it's really important how we think about how we interact with people. And Fired Up as a company works for fraternity and sorority life. They kind of coined the term social excellence. I think it's a good way to put it. Getting your members to make the choice to actually engage, the choice to be curious, the choice to be generous, authentic, vulnerable is going to make all the difference when you're recruiting people, right? Social excellence is the core operating philosophy of great recruiting chapters. Social excellence teaches members to make recruitment experiences that are comfortable for prospective members, right? We're being kind, we're being thoughtful in what we're doing. We're being celebratory of the uniqueness of each person we're interacting with. We're being respectful, right? We understand that these individuals have insecurities. They have hidden realities. We don't know their life, right? We're all just humans recruiting other humans to an organization that's trying to make us better humans, right? That's really what we're doing as fraternities and sororities. So let's not take the humanity out of it. We focus a lot of the time on, the fun stuff, and we spend a lot of time talking about, what it's like to be a member. But when it comes to recruiting individuals, especially ones who off the bat are like, I don't want to join a fraternity, I don't want to join a sorority, how do we change that person's mind? What is it that they're looking for? What are their goals? I think we're short-sighted in thinking, this individual said they don't want to join a fraternity, so I'm not even going to talk to them anymore. Like, that's a waste of my time. But it's not, because so many of our best members are people who didn't want to join. The reason why they joined is because they built relationships with people. So by the time you even ask them if they're willing to join, they've already made that decision. They're all in, because it's not about joining a fraternity. It's not about joining a sorority. It's about joining a group of people that you believe in, that you want to be a part of, right? So philosophically, the more we turn it to that, and we understand that concept, and we talk about it in that framework, we're going to have a much easier job in terms of even designing what our fraternity and sorority recruitment process looks like. Because then we could stop focusing so much on what our rush events look like. We can stop focusing so much on the frivolous stuff, and we talk as a chapter about, all right, So how do we find out, how do we find those members that are going to be future members of our organization? How are we actually going to go about that process? How are we going to talk to them about it? And how are we going to convince people that right now say they don't want to join to actually join, right? The goal of fraternity recruitment events, interactions, processes, informational sessions, whatever it is, should always be one thing, and it's meaningful, authentic, real human connection. So I talk to a lot of chapters who want to do like a dodgeball tournament or something like that. And those things are fun. And those are great ways to open the door. But make sure you also have opportunities for those individuals to really get to know each other. Because yeah, dodgeball is fun, but you need to be building relationships with individuals, right? They're not going to join because you play dodgeball. They're going to join because they had a really meaningful, conversation with you and you connected. And they want to be a part of what you're selling, right? Remember, we're in the relationship business. We're most successful when instead of trying to impress people, we're just trying to connect with them because they can see right through us, right? They can see if you're trying to recruit them. The best way to recruit is for them not to even realize that they're being recruited, is that you're just trying to be their friend, okay? So that's how we want to look at this. It's just being authentic, being compassionate, trying to meet new people. That's what social excellence is about. And that in itself is a recruitment strategy, is be authentic, right? And a lot of you are doing that without even thinking about it. I'm just putting it into words here. But I think actually talking about it as a chapter and how we can do a better job is important. Just because we're doing some things naturally doesn't mean that we can't come together as a chapter and discuss how we could be doing it better. So let's talk about your generation. For the most part, you're all Gen Z. And for the most part, you're recruiting Gen Z. So what does that look like, right? I'm a millennial. So the way that I was recruited, the way that, my generation looks at fraternities and sororities is very different. The millennials, for a big part, were so pro fraternity and sorority. That was, I talked about the ebb and flow of fraternities and sororities across the country. My generation, when I was in school, a lot of us joined fraternities and sororities, right? We're kind of in a time period where a lot of people aren't, right? So it's very different. So let's think about Gen Z for a moment. So understanding the motivators of your peers is kind of the utmost importance if you're involved in marketing the fraternity experience, sorority experience to them. So let's look at what we know about your generation, try to understand what makes them tick so that we can better sell this experience to them. So first and foremost, Gen Z is blended. Your relationship to race and gender is far more fluid and blended than previous generations. Diversity and inclusion are not buzzwords, are not just buzzwords to your generation, right? Your generation are also creators. Your generation is a group of creators. Nearly half of you expect to be your own boss, and around 40% of you plan to invent something that will change the world, right? You're pragmatic. Most of you were born around 9/11 and grew up through multiple wars and a major financial crisis during which people around you lost their homes. You seem to desire practical opportunities that will directly apply to your career ambitions. You seek stability and predictability. These are all things you need to be thinking about when you're recruiting people to join a fraternity or sorority. When their number one question is, why would I spend $400 a semester? Why would I spend all this time to be a part of this organization, right? How are you applying these things to your conversations, right? You're worldly. A large percentage of your generation reports having a close friend in a different country, right? Especially thanks to the internet. Global lines of demarcation make less and less sense to you. Many have done international service-related travel. You're about large global issues, right? So your peers might not be as impressed with your bake sale for a local charity, right? Because you're very interconnected. But you're also quick judges. Because of the flood of information that you've experienced since birth, you've become wildly fast curators. Some have suggested that Gen Z students have an 8-second filter, right? There's a 2015 Fast Company article that said Gen Z have a carefully tuned radar for being sold to and a limited amount of time and energy to spend assessing whether something's worth their time. If that sounds familiar to you as a member of Gen Z, right? You pretty much see through the bullshit, right? When you're being sold to, so that's what actually makes it harder to be recruiting fraternity and sorority members, because A lot of the time, let's be honest, we're not great salespeople. But that's also because of the way we're selling our organizations. We need to stop using buzzwords like brotherhood and sisterhood and service and philanthropy. We need to show those things and talk to them and tell them stories, right, that actually will connect with them so they understand what you're about without you directly telling them. You don't want to sound like a salesman, right? I joined this organization. I was going through a really rough time, and so-and-so, helped me through this, and I've gotten these great opportunities, and I've done all this networking through the fraternity, and I have this internship through the fraternity. And, those are the things that people want to hear, because you're giving them actual examples of your experience that they can understand, and see the benefits from, right? So you want to get past these filters. Winning Gen Z's attention will, mean providing them with engaging and immediately beneficial experiences. A lot of people, we have retention issues. How many of our chapters have lost members in the past year because they just lost interest? A big part of that is because they're not seeing the direct benefits of being in your chapter, right? For a lot of us, it's fine. We're happy wearing the letters and going to meetings and, doing some good stuff throughout the year in terms of service and philanthropy, and having, going to the parties every week. And, that's a good experience for us. But for some, that's not enough. We talk about networking, we talk about job preparation and all these things, but for some of our members, that's what they're looking for. And if we're not doing anything to help them with their professional goals after they graduate, then yeah, the experience becomes meaningless to them. So we want to make sure we understand what makes our members tick, what makes potential members tick. And we want to make sure we're doing those things as a chapter to give them a worthwhile experience, right? Let's see. Our members are seeking personal connection. So face-to-face community as much. So here's the funny thing, right? So I associate personally, I'm a millennial. I'll be honest with you. I associate your generation with Zoom. We're on Zoom right now with using your phones. But I think because of that, they're saying that your generation actually seeks face-to-face communication, whether or not you say it or not, because surprisingly, it's important to your generation because you're so used to communicating through a phone that that deep down you miss actually that in-person connection. And that's where fraternity and sorority can come in and be really important. The majority of the people in a study said that their ability to communicate clearly in person, specifically with older adults, right, like alumni, for example, selling point, hint, hint, was a #1 skill that would ensure their future success, right? I need to be able to look adults in the eye, give them a firm handshake, and ask them how they're doing, right? That's what a 17-year-old said 2 years ago. So this is now a 19-year-old college student somewhere in the United States, right? So those are important skills that a lot of people are missing out on, and fraternity and sorority life can be a great opportunity for that. So how can we use it as a selling point? How can we do a better job in our chapters of networking with alumni and setting that up? Some of our chapters on campus do an excellent job of that already. I'm going to use SAE as an example. I was just on the phone with SAE's president the other day, or SAE's chapter advisor the other day, and we were talking about how during their recruitment process, they have an alumni Zoom, right? It's on Zoom, but they're still creating the opportunity. So alumni who have graduated from Stockton that are in SAE will hop on during a recruitment event with potential members for SAE, and that's a part of their process. And I think that's really cool. And some of them have gone on to become, work in the business world, work in law enforcement. So that's a great opportunity for them to connect to some older folks. So you have to think about these things. That's how we get high quality people that are motivated, right? Showing them the seriousness of our organizations. We are preparing people for the world. We want to connect you with people that are already in their careers. This is what we can do for you. This is how we can help you with your own personal goals. Other considerations. Your generation is also carrying around uniquely heavy baggage. So these things must also be considered. There are at least 6 contributing factors that have shaped the emotional scars that Gen Z arrives to college with. Right. Social media, right? Today's college student spends less time with their friends in person than every previous generation. The average freshman used to spend 16 plus hours on any given week with their friends. Now only about 18% of college freshmen report that. Conversely, the time spent on our phones and social media has skyrocketed. So our generation actually is craving, again, that in-person interaction, right? Yes, Zoom is a great opportunity. I'm using it right now, but those in-person meetings and interactions are so important, right? We can't forget that. Because of this, we see others through the lens of their posed, filtered, cropped, intentionally perfect looking social media stories. The damage being done related to body image, self-worth, personal fulfillment is undeniable. And guys, this is as much a problem for men as it is for women, right? Social media is actually damaging us mentally. So we need to take that into account, even in how we're marketing our own organization. Are we perpetuating stereotypes, and are we putting things on our social media that are, in line with our values? Or are we putting in something, whether we're intentional or not, are we a part of the problem, right? College students are also getting older. They're working more. They're more diverse. They're parents. They're overburdened financially. They're overscheduled. If this sounds like you, it's because it probably is, right? What the fraternity experience used to look like does not work for many men and women today. So that's why you see a lot of adjustments at the national level, what your organizations are doing, but we need to consider that as well, okay? I'm sure I don't have to tell you that the percentage of students reporting mental health issues has skyrocketed. This is exacerbated by the high usage rates of opiates and other drugs to mask these health challenges. Always socializing around alcohol may be attractive to some of you, but it's actually very problematic for an increasing number of college students, particularly men, right? So for the chapters that are recruiting through parties, recruiting through alcohol, you might see what you perceive as like increased number of students that are joining your organization, and that's been a tool for you to recruit. But the science is actually saying that that's been very detrimental, and there's probably a lot of folks that are not joining fraternities because of your connection with alcohol. They don't want to join our organizations because, yes, there's a weekly brotherhood or social, but it's usually around alcohol, and they don't like that. They don't need to be around alcohol all the time. So as much as we've kind of normalized that, and we might want to have alcohol at a lot of our events and have parties all the time, that's not necessarily what a lot of college men are looking for. Social discord, weekly mass shootings, people storming the US Capitol. We had a pandemic, the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter. The past 10 years are unlike any time period, even in my lifetime. Trust in traditional institutions are being challenged. That includes fraternities and sororities. We are traditional institutions. How many more things could we list that incite anxiety and a lack of security to countless segments of our population, right? So again, these are all just considerations I don't have to remind you of, but things we need to think about, right? Failure to fail. Our parents' generation kind of screwed us, so let's be honest. And I'm going to explain why I say that, right? It is unnecessary to rail against helicopter parents or the participation ribbon generation. That's been done, and it does matter, right? We know that, it's funny. I always used to say, whenever somebody older would say to me, like, your generation, everybody needed a trophy. We handed out trophies to all of you. I'm like, yeah, exactly. You handed out trophies to us. We didn't ask for them, right? But I'm not going to harp on that. Young students who do show up at today's colleges and universities do have less failure. I'm going to say this again. Today's college students have less failure and less learned lessons from their failure because of how we've raised you. This point almost feels cliche at this point, but an interested related anecdote from an article reports on a survey of high school students' drug and alcohol use. Use of many substances is at its lowest level since the survey's inception, including alcohol, cigarettes, heroin, cocaine, meth, inhalants, and sedatives. Students are arriving at college not only with the most trophies and participation ribbons, but also with the least experience with the most dangerous substances that they'll very quickly encounter, right? So we actually see an increased number of students who don't know how to use alcohol properly because we're in a generation where the least amount of students ever had alcohol coming to college. On a separate but equally relevant note, students are arriving in colleges and universities with inflated high school grades and quickly acquiring deflated egos upon their college experience. So, a lot more high school kids are graduating with, these GPAs that are not necessarily reflective of them actually being prepared for college. And then we're recruiting men and women coming into our chapters who are then getting C's and D's because, how they learned in high school is not in line with how they're learning in college. It's a very different experience and they can't transfer that ability. So how do we actually meet the needs of our peers, of these freshmen that are coming in, of college students today at Stockton, right? So let's talk about strategies that work. So number one, we need to make it personal. We should not be group. Here's the thing. So technology has made it so easy for us to do things, but that technology has also damaged our ability to build actual relationships with people. So don't group text, don't mass email, don't tag people on Instagram or Facebook, invite them. They won't be attracted to large group feeling. They want a personal invitation. Your generation wants to be reached out to individually by a phone call or in person and be told, hey, we're having this event tonight. I'd love for you to come, right? They want that personal invitation. If fraternity and sorority is about building relationships, that's what we should be doing anyway. If somebody's sending a mass email or out or a group text to like 50 people, I don't feel personal. I don't feel like the chapter actually wants me. I feel like they're, inviting 50 people and hoping 5 people show up. That's what it feels like, right? They'll want to know that you want to build a friendship with them, not a mass surface level friendship. So that's important to think about. Identify the value. This should be what we focus on the most. Let's be honest. In their minds, they're doing the cost benefit analysis about whether it's worth it or not to even join your fraternity or sorority. Remember, you're asking for an important resource, which is their time they could be spending on studying or advancing themselves, money, when an education is already really costly and the price tag just keeps going up, right? So they're thinking about affordability, okay? But we also need to not forget the fun. And I don't think you're doing that either for the most part. But the value and worth are crucial to highlight and focus on when recruiting. Can't forget about the fun. They want to have a memorable experience, but one that doesn't take away from their future. So fun doesn't just mean parties, right? We need to think about what else we're doing from a brotherhood and sisterhood aspect. Are we just hanging out and watching football and playing video games? Those things are equally as important. Stand out. There are so many involvement opportunities on campus to choose from, and many of them are free. So how do you stand out as different from other student organizations? How is a fraternity more valuable than just a club on campus? What do you offer that they don't? It has to be more than just buddies, right? Again, that's why we should stay away from buzzwords like brotherhood and sisterhood. That's meaningless to people. How are we showing them that this is a premium organization? Right? What makes our organization priceless? What makes our organization, make a $500 semester look like a value to them? Okay. And again, in person. Of course, this generation uses digital more than any before it, but the value of true in-person human connection more than anything they see on social media is important. They grew up with fake news, so what you post online better be backed up by real life experiences. And I'm not just using hyperbole and cracking a joke there. So often we talk about things in the recruitment experience and then they join the chapter and they're like, this is not what I was sold. So make sure what you're selling them is reality. Okay. And I'll even reflect on that with our recruitment events, right? A chapter can have awesome recruitment events, right? We're going paintballing, we're going bowling, we're going whatever you're doing for recruitment. All right. Then recruitment ends. I just joined this chapter, had all this fun stuff during the rush week, and recruitment ends. And then when do I do paintball and bowling again? Not until next semester's rush week. Well, why are we selling people activities that we never do unless we're trying to recruit other people? Have we thought about that before? Right? Your rush week should look like what the rest of your semester looks like. So if you're not going paintballing and bowling all the time, I like to call that the Bachelor effect, right? If anybody's watched The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, it's really easy to fall in love with someone when you're on a beautiful island, staying in a 5-star resort, eating 5-star food, right? But then they go home, the show's over, they're going back to their crappy apartment in Minneapolis and living their life normally, and the love fades away really quickly when life's reality sets in, right? So I call this the Bachelor effect. Are we making our rush weeks so awesome that they're like, well, we did all this stuff during rush and we don't do the stuff throughout the semester ever. So we need to be thinking about that. I'm not saying don't do that stuff during rush. I'm saying maybe we need to be doing that stuff a little bit more during the semester as well, right? Fraternity should be fun. Sorority should be fun. All right. So use authentic video. This is something I've been hyper pushing for the past couple of years. I don't see anybody still doing it yet, so I'll keep harping on it. But use authentic video. I'm not talking about flashy, expensive Hollywood style sorority recruitment videos. Sorry for all of you who do that. The drone videos are beautiful. I do enjoy them, but let's be honest, nobody is joining for those reasons. Okay. The Gen Z audience is on YouTube more than any generation before them. They follow vloggers, tutorials, real people, not music video-esque recruitment videos. If you type sorority recruitment into YouTube, you will find popular vloggers giving incoming freshmen tips on makeup and fashion, what things to say or not to say. Is that the content we want to be dominating the web search when people are looking up fraternity and sorority recruitment? Probably not. We should be making our own real vlog style videos that give potential recruits a better idea of what recruitment and membership will look like. We need to be transforming our Instagram and TikTok accounts for our chapter into videos of our members talking about their experiences, what they've gotten out of being out of the chapter, right? We need to make these real videos. That's what recruitment videos should be, right? Giving people real life examples of what it means to be in your chapter. Let's not hide things from potential members. Let's explain how our selection works. These are information seekers. When we lie to them and don't provide more detail about how selections are made, we lose them as members. Using phrases like trust the process and some people slip through the cracks are not cutting it. Potential members want to know what you're looking for in members, so just tell them, right? Don't sugarcoat it. Highlight academics. Make sure you include how your organization is helping members with academics. And if your organization is not helping members with academics, you need to work on that. It's one thing to have an academic chair. It's another thing to have an academic chair and committee that's actually doing work. Career success and getting good grades is a top priority for Gen Z. They know how much their education costs are, and they're taking it more seriously than any other generation. If you come across an organization who mostly parties, many students won't be interested. And yes, you might tell me that our chapter grew to 60 members because we've been recruiting through parties, but the gravy train is going to run out at some point, and typically people who join because of the parties, those chapters tend not to last very long, right? So we need to be focusing on the right things and convincing people to join through other means. Focus on individuality, right? Or at least highlight it. Gen Z students are individuals who want to hold their individuality. They aren't interested in organizations that make them have to conform, and often see fraternity and sorority as places where that is true, right? A stereotype. Fraternities and sororities about conformity, right? We know it's not. We need to convince them of that. Sometimes we do things that make it look like conformity is a part of what we're doing. So we need to be ultra focused on ensuring that's not the case. Focus on the diversity represented in your chapter and be open to recruiting people who are different, right? Correct their assumptions. Most of what students learn about fraternity life is from movies, TV shows, Barstool Sports, right? I see, Viva La Barstool on all of your laptop covers. That's great. Have fun, enjoy those websites and stuff like that. But we're also perpetuating stereotypes of fraternity and sorority life through those things. So we need to be correcting what fraternity and sorority actually is about. When a potential member looks at your social media or meets your members, are they reminded of the negative stereotypes they assumed were true? Or are they looking at what we want them to say? Right? Think about that. Have accurate information easily accessible. These students are going to want to learn whatever they can online. Which is actually also a scary thing, right? There's things out of our control too, right? Like the Greek rating websites and things like that, which we probably all get annoyed at what people post. Googling fraternity currently doesn't result in marketing narratives that we all have in mind. So what information do they need to know, and how can we provide it to them during their web search, right? Do we have updated websites? We're really bad at providing information about our chapters, let's be honest. It's time that we actually start doing that. So I highly recommend updating your Osprey Hub page, updating your website. Maybe your national provides you a chapter website. Make your Instagram more about providing information on your chapter and less about some of the, happy birthday to this member, and, this person's, it's fine if you do like member of the week, but why is that person earned member of the week, right? I see a lot of these things, and our Instagram accounts look beautiful and great, but like, what information are we actually providing to people? Is our social media more for ourselves, or is it for actually marketing ourselves? Because I would make the argument from what I see that basically we're just creating these social media accounts for ourselves. And maybe we need to get past that. So what are some strategies that no longer work that we might continue doing? So fraternity men, I'm going to push back a little bit. I've said this before. If you're new to hearing me talk, this is going to be new, but I don't believe in rush weeks. Not at all. Here's the reason. And if you decide to have a bunch of recruitment events in the beginning of the semester, that's fine. But I think we get so focused, hyper focused on rush week, right? We focus on events to drive numbers. We table, and here's what I think we're doing wrong, right? We're lacking that authentic personal connection. Recruitment is a 365-day process. If we are not actively throughout the entire year positioning ourselves as a chapter to meet as many people as possible throughout the year, then we're doing something wrong. And we're putting a lot of eggs in one basket if we focus on rush week and hoping people show up to our rush, right? And yes, I know we meet people throughout the year and then we invite them to rush week, and that's fine too. And that's something we should be doing. But we need to be positioning ourselves more throughout the entire year, not isolating ourselves, right? We spend so much time with our brothers and sisters that we're not doing a good enough job meeting new people, right? So we need to get away from that. We need to go meet new people. And events don't drive numbers for your chapter. Building relationships with people do. And the more people you meet, the more relationships you'll build, okay? And then tabling. Tabling, I don't think is a bad thing, but I think the way we table can often be not helpful, right? So are we sitting behind the table and not interacting with anyone, just talking to ourselves, eating our lunch and whatever it is we're doing? Are we standing in front of the table and shaking hands with people, introducing ourselves, and using the table just to have information on it, right? So the way we table is just as important. So some social media tips for you. So this might anger some of you because I'm calling you out right now, but no one cares about your members' birthdays. Your members do, but again, is your social media to market your chapter? Is your social media for your chapter members? If it's for your chapter members, then you should just create like a private, like just put that on GroupMe or something like that, whatever you use. Like, why are we using our public social media to be advertising that's somebody's birthday? Think about that. What is the purpose of our social media? Are we using that to recruit people and to teach people about our chapter, right? If that's the case, how is this in line with that? No one cares about your birthday. They do care about how they would benefit from joining. So those are the things you should be highlighting, right? I mentioned those videos before. Why don't you try to get a video up every week, every 2 weeks, 30 seconds, 1 minute video from someone in your chapter, about something they experienced that gives real life insight into what it's like to be a member of the organization, right? How they've benefited. Since social media is now the #1 format that, especially your generation uses to learn information, ensure that you're using it to show them what you're about. So when again, your Instagram accounts, some of them are beautiful. You have like the matching filters and all that kind of stuff. But if I were to go through your social media, what story is it telling me about your organization, right? Look at it from that framework. If a random person stumbled upon your social media, what would they think about your chapter, right? And I know that can be hard to do because it's hard to step into somebody else's shoes, right? We look at everything through, rosy lens because it's our own chapter. We don't think anything, not positive, but put yourself in someone else's shoes, okay? And look at your Instagram from that perspective. Look at your social media from that perspective, right? I'm not saying anything's bad. I'm saying, could we do a better job at informing people about what we represent, right? How much are we actually selling our philanthropy on there, right? Things like that. Are you engaging non-members, or are you just posting and ghosting? What do I mean by that? So are we reaching out to people on our Instagram, right? So we see a great post by the Stockton Biological Society, right? The biology club on campus. And there's a member of the Biological Society who's doing awesome things. Is my fraternity posting on there saying, hey, great job, Jessica, we'd love to meet you. We have an event coming up next week. We'd like to invite you to that, right? Which might seem weird and different for you. But if I were Jessica, I'd be like, okay, like that's pretty cool. I might check out the sorority now, you know? So are you engaging people or are you just posting and ghosting? So what I mean by posting and ghosting is we often post so much stuff on our social media. That's all we think about. We don't actually think about interacting with people on social media, going on other things and commenting and starting conversations on there, DMing people, reaching out to them. We tend to just post and ghost, right? So we really want to look at social media as actual engagement. So that's something we want to try to build. Again, we talked about human connection. We can even build human connection through social media if we use it properly. So meeting people. You can't recruit who you don't know. The statement is unbelievably obvious, but at the same time, utterly profound. Most fraternity and sorority chapters are pretty good at recruitment, but the problem is that we have too few people on our lists from which to recruit. So until you've met someone or they've been referred to you by a trusted source, you have 0% chance to recruit them. The first task of a high-performing recruitment system is to meet as many potential new members as possible. I was just saying this to the IFC right before break, but there are only 250 men in IFC fraternities at Stockton when there are over 4,000 men at Stockton, right? So do the math in terms of percentages. We have so many more men on campus to pull from, but we probably don't interact with 90% of those men, right? So how do we do that? We have to think about that. Quantity drives quality. What do I mean by that? Here's another wildly important statement to understand when it comes to recruitment. Quantity drives quality reminds us that the more people your chapter knows, the more people it has a chance to select from. So you want a high quality chapter, start with a high quantity of names on your list to give your chapter a best or a better chance, right? So are you going to have, if you say you want to recruit 20 new men this semester and you only have 30 men that you're picking from, you think you would get better, you would have 20 better men if you had 400 to pick from? Probably. So you want that list to grow as high as possible and build as many more relationships as you possibly can, right? Some great ways to grow fraternity or sorority names list, right? We call this scouting. Offer a recruitment scholarship. So if I'm Kappa Sigma fraternity at Stockton, and new freshman class comes in, and we're going to offer 2 $100 scholarships to men who, write a paragraph about what they want to get out of college. That gives us a list of new freshmen on campus. Ones that are driven enough to fill out to even write something and submit it, right? If they're gonna submit a scholarship application and write about themselves, then they're probably willing to at least consider a fraternity because they're not lazy, they are driven, they're looking at this as an opportunity. So that's a good way to start your names list, right? Offer those scholarships. Referrals. Every new fraternity that started at Stockton in the past few years, the headquarters has gone to the sororities and asked them, are there any men on campus that are not Greek yet that you would refer to us that we should talk to? Every headquarters has done that, right? There's no reason to stop doing that, right, as you continue. So every organization on this campus, right, your friends and members of other chapters, talk with your friends and see, is there anybody who would fit really well in our organization that's not Greek that we should talk to, right? And again, these are just different examples. I actually like the door holding campaign. Position members of your chapter all around campus, and just, someone's assigned to, the campus center front door from 3 to 4 o'clock. And everyone who walks in, you open the door for them, say hello. If you're in a fraternity and a guy walks through, say hello, ask him if he's ever thought about joining a fraternity, like just start conversations. I know that's really scary, seems really random, but just doing stuff like that could be really cool opportunities to meet random people, okay? And again, random rock, paper, scissors, go up to someone and just challenge them to rock, paper, scissors. Again, very funny, strange ways to meet new people, but it starts a conversation. Okay. I have probably a list of 50 activities that you can do to try to meet people randomly across campus. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'm not going to go through all of these. Move-in day, help with move-in, right? Some of these are really easy to do. Tabling. I mentioned tabling before. Some of us are so bad at tabling. I would have a rule in your chapter that if you suck at tabling, you're not allowed to table for our chapter, right? Which might really limit the number of people who table for your chapter. But maybe that's why you need to have conversations in your chapter about what you need to be doing. So professionalism. Are people wearing sweatpants and like eating lunch while they're behind the table, or are they dressed appropriately and ready to meet new people at the table, right? Are we using technology? Do we have a laptop set up so they can fill out their information if they're interested in the organization, right? Better than using paper, right? So just have a laptop out and have them fill out a form, right? What do I do with my hands? What do I mean by that? You shouldn't be behind the table and just hanging out. You should be standing in front of the table as people walk by, saying hello, introducing yourself, shaking people's hands. That's what you should be doing when you're tabling. Doesn't matter if it's for philanthropy or service, you're trying to sign people up for your pageant, or you're trying to recruit. You should be actively standing in front of the table, talking to people. That is how you interact. That is how you build relationships. Common tabling mistakes. Again, a lot of these are obvious, but you should think about them, right? And if these things are happening in your chapter, make sure you're talking to your chapter members before you table about what they should be avoiding, right? Is it making your chapter look better? Is it making your chapter look, worse, and how you're acting behind the table? Sometimes all students know about your fraternity or sorority is when they walk by in the food court and see you tabling. That might be the only time they ever know anything about your fraternity or sorority. The only interaction they have. And if their only viewpoint of your fraternity is a bunch of guys just like hanging out, chilling and eating and not paying attention to what they're even tabling, that's going to be their perception of your organization, right? Don't let that be the perception. Okay. One thing I also see is I'm going to call out the fraternities here specifically. So men, I'm a fellow man myself. We really suck at tabling. So the second one here, using last minute display materials that look like a third grade science project. Can we please make our tables look nicer? Guys, our tables look like garbage. Usually we show up, we throw up the chapter flag, kind of let it hang down, have like a piece of paper on the table. Could we please do better than that? We need to put effort into how we are presenting ourselves at all times. If it looks like we threw together our table, what's going to be my perception of your organization? That you just throw shit together. I don't want to join an organization that just throws shit together. I want to join an organization that has its shit together. Right? So let's think about that. If your table looks professional, if you're presenting yourself professionally, you have great material, everything looks great, then that says something about that organization the same way it says something about your organization when it looks like you just threw it together. Think about that. All right. Some more examples. All right. Not planning for tabling at all. Dressing sloppy, members hanging out, poor conversation at the table. Right. You don't have to go crazy, but just make sure people walk by, it creates a positive image of your organization. Hosting a successful info session. What does your chapter represent? What do we stand for as an organization? What are top 3 qualities or characteristics that are important for our members to have? Here's a great question. If we were not on campus, our campus would be missing what? Every fraternity and every sorority would probably tell me that if their chapter lost recognition tomorrow and was no longer here, that we'd be missing a huge piece of the university. But I also want you to think about that deeply. If we lost your chapter tomorrow, other than you and your friends and would non-Greeks notice? Would it really matter to the university? If the answer is no, think about how you could be contributing better to the campus community and what it is that you're offering to the campus community, right? Every chapter's goal should be that our chapter is so awesome. We contribute so much to the university and to the students here that if we were ever gone, that would be a detriment to the campus, right? That should be your goal, right? And you want to think about these things. So if you have an info session, we need to be going beyond putting up the flyer on Instagram and hoping people show up, right? From the invitation to the space we're using to how we're inviting guests to what we're actually doing at the info session are important. That's why I call it the invitation, the space, the guest, the show, right? If you've been tasked with planning an informational rush or some type of meeting that provides an overview of your organization, the joining process, and the opportunity for interested students to learn more, right? What do we want to get across in this program? And this is what I'm suggesting in these 4 prompts. What does our chapter represent? What do we stand for? What are those top 3 qualities, okay? Planning. Planning the perfect informational is just like planning the perfect gathering or any other program. The invitation, the venue, the list, and the activities once the gathering begins all matter, right? The artifacts, the board, your letters, and pretty much all the items on display are nice. Yet all of those items don't nearly amount to portraying all that it means to being your member of your chapter. So here are a few things you should consider. So the invitation. Know your people and get personal with it. Who are the people you want to attract to join and inform? How are you advertising the meeting besides flyers or social media? Instead of just calling it an info night, try Brotherhood Beyond College or Life in a Fraternity. Extend a personal invite to people who have expressed interest, people who might meet your qualities or characteristics or criteria, the first-year students you met during move-in, for example. The space. Environment sets the tone. So what kind of vibe are you going for? What does the venue and the physical space allow us to do with the room? What does the setup look like? Do we have round tables? Is it lecture style? Is it conference block, right? So whatever you're trying to do, it should match the vibe. Create an appropriate playlist to match the vibe. Have a music playing in the background before you start the presentation, right? Every little thing matters. Think about this in detail. People need to feel welcome and know they matter. What is the check-in procedure for showing up to an information session? Are guys just walking in saying, hey, is this the XYZ info night? And the guy goes, yeah. And then you just go in and sit there quietly, all right? How do the guests know the space is safe for questions or conversation with the members? Are there refreshments or ways you can break the ice, right? What you should be doing is have someone who's greeting guests outside the room, welcoming them in, holding the door for them, right? Floaters who are there to engage in conversation while they're waiting for the program to begin. That's what you should be doing, right? And now the show. How do we present our organization, right? How we present our organization is how people are going to receive it. So what's on the agenda? Does the program flow? What do you want your guests to leave the program understanding, knowing, or curious about? Insert stories when you can. The impact of I realized what brotherhood meant after attending my first regional conference, right? Et cetera, et cetera. When my big brother passed down his jacket to me, I felt, et cetera, et cetera. Those messages are much more powerful than we stand for brotherhood, service, and democracy, right? Again, we're so used to seeing these keywords that are just meaningless to people. Stories, tell them stories, show them personal experiences. The more conversations you have, the more names you know, and the more people you meet, the better your chapter can be informed to select more of the right members for your organization. Shake hands, answer questions, make people feel like they belong, right? I'll quickly provide you an example. All of you probably have different values, different selection processes. I know the sororities are very specific ones. For a lot of the fraternities, I know you don't often. So I wanted to provide an example, but we should use a values-based selection process. So, what are the things that we value? And then what are standards that we have as an organization that could align with those values? So if somebody wants to join my fraternity, what is the decision-making process of whether or not we give them a bid, right? It shouldn't just be random opinions of members, right? Let's just put this person to a vote. Well, what are we voting on, right? So let's have some standards in place for, that align with the values, right? So if we value academics and knowledge, do we have a GPA requirement? Do they meet it, right? Service, is this somebody who actually does service events, or are we going to have to convince them to do service when they join? which we all know is really hard. Leadership. Have they ever been a leader in another organization? Are they involved in campus, right? Things that we think we're going to be able to change when they join. Let's be honest, people are who they are. So a values-based selection process is choosing people based on how they align with your values already. Okay. If, you're going around the room and people are saying, well, he's a good guy, I really liked him, that's not really criteria to join, right? In fact, that's often become, a joke in the industry. There's actually a book on fraternity recruitment, and it's called Good Guy. And that's said in jest because, often if I'm a fly on the wall in a recruitment meeting for a chapter and they're discussing PNMs, people are very likely to say, well, we should give him a bid. He's a good guy, which is kind of meaningless. Why is he a good guy? Like, tell me about this person. What values and what do they possess that would make them a valuable member of this organization? That, we should be recruiting people that are going to be great contributors to our chapter, right? We need to be taking that more seriously, right? This should be like a college admissions process. If you're going to get the gift of fraternity and we're going to let you wear the same letters as us, like, how are you earning that? And by the way, what I mean by earning that is people earn that before you give them a bid, not when they get the bid. We should be recruiting people who live up to our values, right? So what are we specifically looking for a member and how are we measuring that? The pre-close. So oftentimes this is not something we do, but before you even offer a bid, are you having the conversation of, if we were to ask you to join, if we were to give you a bid, like, what would you say right now? When a prospective member says no or not yet, and they follow it up with, I can't afford it, or my parents will let me, I'm going to wait a semester, or I'm going to think about it. Did you know that they probably don't really mean any of those things? That's what research shows, right? That's true. So most of those concerns or excuses are really just veiled ways of communicating something much simpler, much more important. Here it is. So those excuses communicate one of two things, right? That you all don't seem to love me yet, or I don't really love you all yet. What I mean by that, fraternity and sorority is about building relationships. So it doesn't matter if it's finances, it doesn't matter, whatever their excuses for not accepting a bid, what it comes down to is that you haven't built a strong enough relationship where there's no way they're going to say no, period, right? You talk to someone who can't afford to be in a fraternity, they're going to find a way to afford it. They're going to find a way to make that money if they really want to be a part of your organization. If they say, no, I can't afford it, then you haven't done enough, building relationship with them for them to make that worth it regardless. I'm going to go bust my ass and get another job so I can save up that $400 for the dues for the semester because this is something I have to do. If you haven't gotten guys to that point yet, then you're not doing enough work to get that guy's bid, right? After years of teaching, researching, and watching fraternity recruitment personally, I'm 100% convinced that the main ingredient for any fraternity and sorority is this relationship building, is this love of the group, right? 99% of the time when someone is hesitating to join, it isn't for any real logical reason. It's a lack of human connection. It's a lack of that emotional charge. Fraternities sell one thing and we peddle it, and it's brotherhood. What we mean by that is a strong relationship. It's a bond. It's love, right? We call it brotherhood. We call it purpose, values, but all of those things are just a manifestation of a person feeling loved, like they're a part of something, right? We need to get to that point. There's an important recruitment skill that we call the pre-close, right? And that's when after you've gotten to know a prospect really well, that you've gotten to know you and your organization really well, you ask, if we're going to ask you to join, what would you say? It's at this point that they'll respond with either a yes and no or a maybe, right? No's and maybes get a follow-up question. What's the one thing that's holding you back? But understand that what the pre-close process really is about is an opportunity for each party to have a real emotional check-in to find out if the prospective member feels at home yet, if they feel like they're a part of your group, if they feel like they can matter within your organization, if they feel loved yet, right? When you find out their concerns or excuses for not yet wanting to join, you'll also find that you probably won't be able to convince them to join with logic, information, data, or bullet points. Because again, those are the things that don't really matter. It's about the relationship building. They'll need more connection, more friendship, more emotional exchange. Factual info will be helpful, but the real convincing is an act of the heart, not the brain. Do they feel a part of the group yet? Do they feel like this is the brotherhood for them? If they don't feel that sense yet, nothing else is going to matter. Right? Top 10 reasons why people turn down bids that we've all heard, right? I can't afford it. So here are some responses you might provide, okay? Somebody says, I can't afford it. You might also ask, do you know how much it costs? Can I connect you with some other members who also had financial concerns before joining, right? Those conversations might help them. My mom, dad, partner doesn't want me to join. Well, you might ask them, would it be okay if I talked with them, right? Don't be afraid to talk to someone's parents. What information can I give you to help, your girlfriend better understand our organization? I have to focus on school. You might also ask them, have you met our scholarship chair? Can we help you develop a personal academic performance plan, right? How are you aligning your organization with what they're valuing and what's important to them, right? I just don't want to join right now because I'm focused on this. Well, how can our fraternity help you focus on that? We might be great for you for that reason, right? So I can provide you some typical responses to a lot of these things. So if that interests you, I'd be happy to share that as a resource, right? How do we give bids out? So this is more so for the IFC fraternities. Everybody else has a different process, but Panhandle, it's a formal process, and during the spring, recruitment counselors give out the bids. But for the IFC fraternities in particular, we need to be personal. We need to be respectful. We need to set expectations for what membership looks like. We need to directly ask them, and we need a clear commitment, right? This should be an intimate moment for someone. You're asking them to be a part of something for life. Okay. It's a very big decision. It's a decision that will impact a person's life for the rest of their life. So, I think we often forget that, and we look at it as a simple transaction. There's a lot of gravity to joining a fraternity or sorority. And if you don't feel like your experience was that way when you were asked to join, well, maybe it's your time to elevate that for the next person, right? How can we make this a special moment, right? It's really important. Be respectful. This is an opportunity to demonstrate the parts of fraternity that go beyond our ability to have a good time. Don't make a scene. Don't put pressure on the person. Don't corner them into saying yes. You should have done the pre-close already, so you shouldn't be giving a bid to someone who you don't know is going to accept it. Your goal should be to have 100% bid acceptance rate. The way you do that is to talk to people about whether or not they would join before you give them the bid in the first place, right? Make sure you've had a chance to clear the air and hear any of their concerns and talk through the decision before you do it. Set expectations. The tone and tenor of this moment will set really important and long-lasting expectations of membership for them. Take the opportunity to clearly go through all the things you expect from a new member, all the things that they should expect from you. Talk about consequences of not following through on commitments to the organization, and what it means to come to meetings and risky behavior and keeping promises, and, what all those clear expectations are, holding people accountable. Those are important. Don't be around the bush. Don't be coy. Don't be shy. Just directly ask them. We would like to formally invite you to join our fraternity. This is a bid or invitation to membership. We're excited to give this to you. Will you join us? Right? Don't beat around the bush. Just directly ask them. And get a clear commitment. Have them sign a membership contract. Have them sign an official bid. Give them a copy of their signed bid. Have them shake the hands of all the members that are present. Have them verbally repeat what they've committed to. If they aren't ready to make a clear acceptance, make clear how long they have to make that decision and when you'll be meeting them to get a clear yes or no. Don't let it float on and hope that they get back to you. Have those clear dates in mind. Clarity is really important here. Let us know when you're ready. Your organization, is way too important to let it be, floating on. And then how do we maintain the members that we've actually recruited? So a lot of this comes down to recruitment, to be honest with you. So it's going to circle back to a lot of things I just talked about. But, misaligned expectations is usually the first one, particularly for students in the first year they join. Many former members of fraternities and sororities feel like they were sold one experience through the marketing or recruitment, but then what they actually experienced when they joined was very different. The recruitment experience often feels like this fun buddy club, right? The instant best friends, perfectly organized joy, right? I talked about the bachelor effect, we're selling them something and then we're not even doing those things after they join. And then we turn it into mandatory attendance and fines and house duties and stuff like that. They need to have a clear expectation of what membership actually looks like. Often members leave because of the lack of connection. Large organizations are almost always made up of cliques or friend groups, which are not a bad thing. I'm going to say that's natural and normal. But when friend groups become toxic, most friend groups completely are healthy, but some become toxic. There's at least one person in your organization who doesn't have a friend group, and I almost guarantee you that. So think about that person or who those people are right now. That is who is most likely to quit sometime this semester, right? People quit. And in fact, people quit college because too often they don't have a best friend or friend group. Now think of your seniors in your organization. You might realize that most of their friend groups have graduated or disengaged from the chapter. This means that they're likely to disengage sometime soon as well. Let's be honest. By the way, the best method to build meaningful friend groups and connections is not through events. Fraternities and sororities have a bad habit of trying to solve everything with events. This is not a problem that can be solved that way. Relationships take time, effort, and intentionality to be built. Brotherhood is not created overnight, right? So we need to be doing intentional activities, and it's not, doing an event that's going to fix everything. The third reason people report they've left their fraternity is typically drama or discord. One person said this, the other person said that. One group wants more socials, the other one wants more service. We're not aligned with our values. This is not what I expect. One member thought they'd win a position, another actually did. I'm quitting. I should be president. One group feels threatened by another group. One member broke a rule. This group has their back. Others are holding them accountable. Drama comes in many forms, and it's impossible to avoid. But a chapter that has well-aligned expectations, membership, and healthy connections rarely feels any real pain from the natural and normal drama that is inevitable, right? We're never going to get rid of the drama, but how we react to it is different. External factors, such as the return of the investment of membership, perceived value of the experiences, competing interests, really make up the last reason why people leave a chapter. These factors are seen mostly, honestly, in Gen Z. I talked to alumni from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and they don't understand why people would drop out of their fraternity or sorority. That was just not something that used to happen. But your generation, there's a higher value placed on purposeful financial investments and developmental experiences. And, fraternity is seen as a premium experience. And it's often one of the more expensive extracurricular options on a campus, as you know. Members need to be sure that the financial investment is returning skills and relationships that last beyond the undergraduate experience. And if your chapter is not providing that, people are going to leave, right? We've all heard of members who want to leave because of finances, but what that often really means is this is not worth it to me. When the financial investment stops being worth it, they're more likely to leave, right? Plain and simple. This is especially important during the new member period when members are in that, try before you buy mentality. We're not the only student organizations on campus, folks. And when there are handfuls of others that also offer leadership scholarship service, at a lower price tag, members leave to competing organizations when the time and financial investment appear to have a higher return on investment, right? I like to say this, they can party anywhere. We put such a heavy burden on our organizations to have like 1 or 2 parties a week, and that's where we put a lot of our energy. And some of our members are not into that, and that's what they look at in terms of the return on investment. Listen, if I'm not getting the networking and the personal development skills and all these other things out of the fraternity or sorority, I can probably get those in another student organization. And then all that's left of the parties, well, let's be honest, it's a lot of you are, people are coming to your parties regardless of whether or not they're in the chapter or not. I know IFC had a big conversation in the fall, I believe, about, whether or not we should have our parties and fraternity and sorority community be a little bit more closed to fraternity and sorority members. Because, why would I join, if I'm in it for the social reasons, why would I join a fraternity or sorority when I can get into the parties anyway? I think that's a valid argument. I'm going to be honest with you. If that's the main reason for a lot of organizations, why would I spend $400 a month to do that? So I'm not saying that is the main purpose of any of your chapters, but for some people, that might be the only reason why they join, and it loses that power if they can leave and still go. So things to think about, that's it. So anyway, Stockton rules and procedures in terms of recruitment. This is the final thing. Okay. Recruiting is different than offering membership or a bid. So what I mean by that, you can recruit anyone at any time. It's winter break still. You might have, met someone who's a freshman in the fall, and you might live nearby and you hung out with them over break. Good. That's recruitment. Whether they can accept their bid or not is dependent of their GPA and their status at the university. So yeah, somebody can't join and go through a new member process until their second semester as a freshman, or, there's a specific time period that your chapter does that. But, recruitment is building relationships. You should be building relationships every day with people. So, it's important. Do not induct new members or submit names to your headquarters, begin the educational process, or collect fees from them until the university has approved the student to join. So you should not be doing anything with a potential new member until I've approved them to join, right? And that is submitting names to me. That is them going through the eligibility process, signing a FERPA release so that I can provide you their GPA, them signing off on the hazing prevention policy so they understand what hazing is. That is them receiving the new member bill of rights so they know what their rights are as a potential new member. Once we've gone through that process and I have given you the green light, literally, you can give them a bid at that point, or you can accept them into the new member program at that point. Okay. I make this easy by sharing a Google spreadsheet where you can add names and we can update you on their status. So every chapter that plans to recruit this semester, I will create a Google spreadsheet to share with you as a chapter. So that way you can, in real time, give me names of folks and go through that process. I will actually highlight green, red, and yellow on the spreadsheet. Green means go. Green means they are eligible and you can give them a bid and they can go through the new member process. Red means no, and that's probably because they don't have a GPA. And yellow means, they have not finished the eligibility yet. So I'm just waiting on them to finish that before I make them green, right? So pretty simple. When your chapter is prepared to begin the new member process, your chapter must submit an official request and be approved by university before commencing. So that's called the new, that's called the request for intake form. You will need to provide a calendar of new member activities that includes dates, locations, and subject matter for what you're covering in those new member activities, as well as the final list of new members that you'll be inviting to your chapter. So I'll walk you through that process as you're recruiting, so you don't have to worry about it. If you ever have any questions, you just let me know. But an example of what I'm talking about. So here's Alpha Chi Rose. I just made up Michael Smith. It's not a real person. But here's one for fall 2022 names list. So I'm going to make a Google Doc that looks like this. You have guys that you're looking at, you have women that you're looking at to join the organization. You're going to give me their name, their Z number, their Stockton email address, and that's all you need to do. You can provide notes if you'd like. If they're a transfer, you can tell me that. I'll also put notes there. Once they sign the FERPA form, I will put their GPA there. I will highlight this green if they're good to go. I will highlight this red if they're not eligible. And then, you'll know that I've at least looked at them if it's yellow, because That means that they're not yet green, but they must be working on the process. So pretty simple. I try to keep it simple, but you need to do this before you do anything, so that I know who you're looking at in terms of recruitment. Now, if you're a Panhellenic sorority and we're going through the formal recruitment process, you do not need to do this until after formal recruitment if you are doing COB. But during formal recruitment, you can just ignore this process because we use Campus Director for this. That is actually it. Does anybody have any questions? I went through a lot of information. And if you're not live with me right now and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Just shoot me an email, set up a meeting, and I would be happy to go over specifics with you. All right. Well, seeing no questions, I'm going to end this here. Quiz will go out with the video. I thank everybody for participating, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you.